Today I'm going to be sharing my favorite pizza dough recipe, and I have 3 different ways that you can use it. I don't think you'll be disappointed. First up, I'm making a pizza that is going to be topped with a freshly made tomato sauce, a combination of cheddar and mozzarella cheese, and we're going to use a sausage topping that's made from our mule foot pork that we raise here on the farm. The second recipe will be my version of a farmhouse calzone. I'm not Italian. I don't claim to know anything about Italian cuisine except for the fact that I really like to cook, and this is a really wonderful dough, and using fresh ingredients, I don't think you can go wrong. When I make pizza dough, a lot of times I have extra left over and I don't want to eat a pizza for a second day, so I'll make these calzones and stick them in the freezer, and then when life gets hectic on the farm, I can take them out and bake them and they're ready to go. Lastly, I'll be making a sweet treat that's perfect for adults and children. It's a deep fried dough that I coat in powdered sugar, and then I heat up some raspberry jam and use that for a dipping sauce. Man, it is delicious. It's one of my favorite things. I don't do a lot of deep frying because I don't want to clean up the mess. And I like the fact that most of the time I have everything in my pantry that I need to make this. So we're going to go ahead and get started on the pizza dough. I'm going to use a kitchen scale. I have a small dish, and I'm going to add 30 grams of warm water to this. I want it just warmer than room temperature. And we're going to use this to put our active dry yeast in. I use 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast. If you don't buy it in the jar, it would be equivalent to 1 package. And the purpose for letting this bloom separately is to make sure that your yeast is active. It does have an expiration date, and it's always a good idea to check that before you get started. And then in the same bowl, as I have my water and my yeast, I'm going to add my honey, and I'm putting in 10 grams. And this honey comes directly from our farm and our beehives. Last year we had a really nice crop. I had lots of buckwheat growing on the farm, and the honey is really lovely. So the little bit of sugar will activate the yeast, and a little quicker than just the water. But I like either a little bit of granulated sugar or honey in my pizza dough. I think it makes for a much crisper crust. So we're going to set that to the side, and we're going to let that bloom. In my KitchenAid mixing bowl, I'm going to add 300 grams of warm water, 10 grams of kosher salt, and 10 grams of olive oil by weight. In a separate dry mixing bowl, we're going to put that on the scale. We're going to take our weight back to 0, and I'm going to add 500 grams of bread flour. I'm going to add that flour right into the mixing bowl. I'm going to clean up a little bit while my yeast is blooming. I'm going to go ahead and put in my yeast. I touch my mixing bowl, and I'm going to use my dough hook for this. The dough will start out fairly shaggy, and I'll let that go for a few minutes and see if I need to scrape down the bowl. By adding the wet ingredients first, most of the time I don't have any pockets of flour stuck to the bottom. I turn up the speed on the mixer and I let it run for just about 2 minutes. I have a glass bowl that I'm going to transfer my dough into. If I wasn't trying to demonstrate, honestly, I would leave it right in this mixing bowl, but I want you to be able to see as the dough rises. This is a fairly wet dough at this point. I'm going to coat it in olive oil. And that will keep the dough from forming a skin while it rises, because we don't want that. And then there's that. One of the benefits of making a dough with the dry yeast is it's pretty predictable in how it will behave. At room temperature, I would think in the average house, you know from start to finish just how long this is going to take. My dough is going to rise for just about an hour. I'm going to shape it into dough balls. Then it's going to do a second rise. So in a period of 2 to 2.5 hours, I know that I can have the calzone ready and the pizza. I love a sourdough pizza crust, but if I find out later in the day that my grandchildren are coming and they want pizza, I can kind of whip this together pretty quick. All right, our dough should be risen. That's pretty. Look at that. I have my dough scraper, a little bit of all-purpose flour, just to use as bench flour. Just put that on, I'll push some to the side. And then that way I can use it to dip my fingers in. And let's take a peek. Wow, that is pretty. Okay, and it came out. Just lightly pre-shape the dough. So I'm going to cut this in thirds. Let it be one for the pizza, one for the calzone, and one for a little bit of fried dough. Pulling over with my thumbs and tucking. And this will be the final rest for this dough. The dough is wet enough that the addition of a little extra flour is not going to make it biscuit-like. Cover this up and we'll start working on our fresh tomato sauce and our toppings for the pizza and our filling for inside the calzone. I've preheated my oven, and once my dough is risen for the second time and ready to roll out for the pizza, the stone in the bottom of my oven will be hot. I'm going to saute some mushrooms and an orange bell pepper. I really prefer the orange, red, or yellow over the green. I feel like the green is a little raw for me. We won't use all of these toppings for the pizza, so we can actually put some inside of our calzone also. My pepper, I like to just peel off the outside edges. That way I don't get any of that bitter membrane on the pepper. And I don't have to worry about the seeds. I saute all my vegetables individually, that way if someone doesn't want peppers or mushrooms or meat, spinach, garlic, whatever it is they don't want on their pizza or in their calzone, you can build them individually. For my calzone, I'm going to do a combination of spinach and ricotta with a little sauteed garlic, maybe a little bit of the Italian sausage. Okay, I think my peppers are where I want them to be. They've got a little bit of color on them. Add my mushrooms. I'm going to cover them up for just a minute. Okay. I'm going to put our mushrooms in the container. I'm going to dump out the water from the mushrooms because I don't want my spinach to have a brown color to it. I've got this over medium to high heat. I'm going to add just about a tablespoon of water. I'm going to let that steam for just a minute or two, and then I'll add my garlic. 2 cloves of garlic that I diced up earlier. Okay, we've got a nice wilt, and we've cooked the garlic just enough so that it doesn't taste raw. Chosen to go with a sweet Italian sausage. And so this is from our Mulefoot pigs. Our processor does a really nice job with the seasoning blends. And I'm going to clean up just a tad. While the sausage is cooking, I'm going to go ahead and make our quick tomato sauce. I use a 16-ounce jar of whole peeled tomatoes in juice. I really prefer it to a crushed tomato. Dump that in so it doesn't spill on us. I'm going to add about a teaspoon of sugar and a nice healthy pinch of Italian dry seasoning. We're going to whiz it up. And that's it. Seems a shame to mess up the blender for that short period of time, but it certainly is worth it. Okay, our sausage is cooked. We'll turn off the heat. It's a lot of prep ahead of time, but once we get it all done, it's going to assemble very quickly. You could actually do all of the toppings and ingredients the day before. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble my cheese filling for the Cowzone 15-ounce container of whole milk ricotta. I'm going to do just about a quarter of a cup of Romano cheese. And I'm going to say a cup and a half of mozzarella. Add an egg yolk to that. Beautiful egg yolks right from our hens. I'm going to stir this up. I'm going to add black pepper. I would say that's probably a half a teaspoon. Half a teaspoon of salt. A little bit of nutmeg. We're going to taste that. It's really good. Our dough is really beautiful. See, it's just like a little pillow. So it's got lots of air pockets and things like that, and we want to be careful just to how we handle the dough. So we're going to start just by pushing out on the center. Right? Working, we're going to pick the dough up, and I'm just going to lightly stretch it. If you go to stretch your dough and it doesn't want to give, it's not relaxed enough. But this feels amazing. So I'm shaping the dough right on my peel. This is a super peel, which is wonderful for transferring wet dough. With a very thin crust, you want to be cautious not to put too much sauce or too much cheese on it. Leaving a small rim around the outside. You can smell the tomatoes. They just smell so fresh. Now I'm going to top it with a combination of mozzarella and cheddar. Thick shred whole milk cheese. In the summer I like to do a fresh mozz that's fairly dry with tomatoes and basil. No sauce. Going to put a little bit of sweet Italian sausage around. I'm fairly sparse with it. I know it's really tempting to want to put a lot of the toppings on, but this is one place where more is not better. Some of my mushrooms. And a little bit of our sauteed peppers. This is ready to go in the oven. My oven's set to 500 and has been for over an hour, and I know that my stone will be right around 560 at this point. I'm going to set my timer for 9 minutes. Okay, we are almost through the cooking time. I want to take a quick peek. Oh boy, that's pretty. Just turn it around so it can be evenly cooked all the way. Okay, I think our pizza is ready. It's been 9 minutes. Let's see what we've got. Nice and brown on the bottom. Really beautiful. Super crunchy, which I like. I'm going to pace myself because I always like to save room for, for the donuts. I really like for the crust to support the topping, so even though the crust is very thin, there's not so many toppings on it that it's wants to flop over. Yum. Very, very good. I tried to make this video yesterday when I took the pizza out of the oven. I didn't put the wood cutting board underneath of it, and I lost the whole pizza on inside the oven. It was not a good time. Your family is going to love this. My grandchildren grew up eating this pizza. If you try to get them a carry-out pizza now, they're pretty vocal on what pizza they want and what pizza they don't want. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to make the calzone. Once again, I'm going to make it right on the peel. I'm going to take the larger of the two that are left. I'm going to stretch these out so that the dough's nice and relaxed. You can actually let the weight of the dough work for you. I do make the crust on this one just a tad thicker than what I do on the pizza. We have our toppings already made. This ricotta filling is very similar to what I would use for a ravioli. So I'm just going to spread that out. I'm leaving a nice wide edge so I can turn my crust over and seal it. Just a little bit of sausage. A little bit of spinach. I've made the decision that I'm not going to put any sauce inside of that. I'm just going to use the sauce for dipping. Taking it over, seal the edge just by slightly rolling it. I'm going to rub it lightly with a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to add some vents for steam to escape, and then we're going to put that in the oven. Okay. Pull my stone out. Transfer my calzone. Not even sure if I can call it a calzone. Honestly, it's just my version of it, so we're going to call it a farmhouse style. We're just about midway through the cooking process, and I'm actually going to raise this up so that it doesn't get overly brown on the bottom by putting a oven rack underneath. I've started my pan on top of the stove with a little bit of cooking oil in it so we can get right into doing the donuts. All right, 9 minutes. Okay. Now I can turn my oven off. Looks really pretty. It's not overly brown on the bottom. We're going to let that cool for just a minute before I cut into that because there's no need to just burn myself. Nice and crunchy. In the past, I have taken these right after I've folded them. I put them on a sheet pan. I stick them in the freezer. And then once they're frozen pretty solid, I take them out and I wrap them up really well. And then they keep wonderfully in the freezer until you're ready to cook them. So even though it's a lot of work on the front end, the back end is super quick. 9 minutes cooking time for both of these. There you go, my oven's already cool. Really good. That's our second recipe using the pizza dough. My third and final recipe for using the dough is a fried donut. I'm only going to make half of this because my husband loves them and he's not home right now, so when he gets here, I'll make him some also. I've cut the dough in little triangle shapes. Pyrex dish, I'm going to put some raspberry jam in there. And I'm going to heat it up in the microwave for maybe a minute on a medium to medium-low heat. While the raspberry jam's heating up, I have just a little less than a cup of 10x or confectionate sugar. I'm going to put it inside of a paper bag. This is going to go very quickly. I'm going to take one little piece of dough and put that in and see if it comes to the top, and I'll know if my oil temperature is what I want it to be. Yep. We're going to put these in the oil. Make sure you always make it so that it goes away from you so you don't splatter. I turn them pretty quickly because they're going to develop an air pocket, and then they won't want to roll over. It's been less than a minute and the fried dough is getting a nice color. I moved my dough to a plate that has a paper towel so it can soak up the excess oil. We put our fried dough in the bag. We're going to shake it up. Fried dough with the powdered sugar, and we dip it in our hot raspberry jam. Be careful not to inhale so you don't choke on the 10x sugar. It's so good. I tell you, it's worth making the dough and going through the trouble just to have the donut. So with one dough, I was able to make donuts, pizza, and a calzone. My family really enjoys these recipes, and I certainly hope that you give them a try because I'm sure your family will as well. My goal was to make one video a week, either in the kitchen, in the garden, working with the bees, or out on the farm with my livestock. And I'm really looking forward to sharing our farm adventures with you.